Let's talk more about that as Senate Judiciary Member John Kennedy. Senator, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Maria.
So you've got the testimony on Thursday. First off, is that official? Are we going to hear from Ms. Ford?
Yes. Yes. Senator Grassley worked very hard to create a venue and a setting in which Dr. Ford would feel comfortable. I think he gave her 3 or 4 different extensions of time. We gave her a multitude of dates. We offered to do it public or privately, and we're set to go Thursday morning.
So how soon after that testimony would you expect to have a vote in the committee?
I don't know. I do know that we have an October 1 deadline. That's when the Supreme Court starts its new term. And I think that the United States Senate would not be doing its job if we didn't make an attempt to have a 9th justice confirmed by that date. And we're going to do it.
So your reaction to all of this so far by his detractors and really your colleagues on the left wanting to stop President Trump's pick from getting to the Supreme Court?
Well, I can only speak for myself, Maria. I listened to Judge Kavanaugh last night and Mrs. Kavanaugh. I find him to be believable. That doesn't mean that I don't want to hear from Dr. Ford and that I'm not willing to listen to very carefully to what she has to say. I think what's very important through all this is the dimension of time. I think the average mainstream American is entitled to ask questions like, how can we know what happened, if anything, 35, 40 years ago? Why didn't Dr. Ford bring this up before 2012? And even then, I think she didn't name Judge Kavanaugh. Number 3, I think a lot of people are entitled to ask why Senator Feinstein sat on these allegations. I'm not impugning her motives, but there are only 3 reasons for her to have sat on these allegations. Number 1, she thought they weren't relevant. Number 2, she thought they weren't credible. And number 3, she decided to wait until the confirmation hearing was over. And that has really hamstrung the entire process. I'm not naive. This whole thing is marbled with politics. Right. But I'm not interested in the political and cultural combat. I'm interested in being fair to both parties. Some of my colleagues think that you're morally tainted if you don't automatically believe the accuser. I think you're morally tainted if you don't afford both the accuser and the accused due process. I don't want to live in an America where you can't defend yourself.
After all, and I thought you were innocent until proven guilty, Hugo.
Yes, Senator,
you are.
Yeah.
Senator Hugo Gurdon here. I wanted to ask you how much encouragement the interview last night with Brett Kavanaugh brings to the Republicans in the Senate. I think both he and his wife, I think perhaps you'd agree, they're probably pretty shell-shocked, and you can understand that because of what's happened over this the last several weeks. But he's just as adamant today. There's no equivocation. He's saying, I was not involved in any incident like this. And that perhaps, tell me if it does, it probably helps senators to say, no, this is an innocent man. We're going to move forward with this, and he deserves the kind of an up or down vote.
I've spoken personally with Judge Kavanaugh. He is resolute. He has said unconditionally this did not happen. I wasn't surprised to see him on television. He has been chomping at the bit to go out and defend his integrity. When I talked to him, he wasn't mad at anybody. He didn't have anything bad to say about anybody. But put yourself in his shoes. If I were in his shoes, I don't care what my handlers told me. I would have been out there on day 1 going, this did not happen. This did not happen. Let me give you my side of the story. This is still America. I have the right to due process. I'm surprised that he waited as long as he did.
Senator, I want to try to set expectations for this hearing on Thursday. Judge Kavanaugh was out there yesterday. He's saying he never did this to anybody at any time. We've heard from his counterpart who says this did happen. Is anything really going to get resolved on Thursday? Is the public going to be any closer to having a judgment on whether something happened or didn't?
I have no idea, and here's why. Think about this. Have you spoken with Dr. Ford? I haven't. I don't know anyone who has. In fact, I think all of this information, the genesis of it is a story in the Washington Post. Now, I'm not putting down the Washington Post, but she's spoken to one person or one group, the Washington Post. I have no idea whether it's accurate or not. That's why I wanted Dr. Ford, and I'm glad she agreed, to come to a hearing. Yeah. But these cries for FBI investigation, I don't have enough information to ask for an investigation. I don't have any information except what I read in one news article. And the U.S. Constitution, no disrespect, says that the Senate has to advise and consent, not the Washington Post. Right.
No, I think this is an important point because the media has been driving the bus on the detractors of President Trump and his agenda.
Well, I'm not fussing at them, Maria. I mean, I believe in a free press, but
of course,
all of this stems from a Washington Post story, and so far as I know, the only entity that's spoken to Dr. Ford are the representatives from the Post, and that's just not sufficient for me as a senator to vote.
Dr. Ford wrote a letter to Chuck Grassley saying, when I first learned that Brett Kavanaugh was on the short list of nominees to fill a Supreme Court vacancy prior to the president's selection among a list of what seemed to me as similarly qualified candidates, I contacted my local congressperson's office in an attempt to provide information that could be useful to you and the president when making the selection from among a list of candidates. She wanted to be under the radar and just give this information, but instead the Democrats went with this and obviously leaked it to the Washington Post, and now she's had to hire security and her family is living in different places. So I just bring that up because it just seems to me that the Democrats really threw her under the bus. She didn't want this attention. But look, this is for another conversation. I got to ask you about it, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. He's going to be meeting with the president this Thursday. Chaos swirling around his future with the White House. President Trump commented on the upcoming meeting yesterday. Here's what he said.
I'm meeting with Rod Rosenstein on Thursday when I get back from all of these meetings, and we'll be meeting at the White House, and we'll be determining what's going on. We want to have transparency, we want to have openness, and I look forward to meeting with Rod at that time.
So, Senator, we know what Rod Rosenstein said, whether it was sarcastic or not. Do you want me to wear a wire, record the president, maybe invoke the 25th Amendment, try to get him out? We also know that Rod Rosenstein gave the okay, official okay, to wiretap Carter Page. He was the one who okayed the final FISA warrant. How does this play out?
Well, I'm biased. I support and I'm a big fan of both of them. Now, Mr. Rosenstein has denied it. For what it's worth, I believe him. I think this is another sideshow, which is part of Mr. Mueller's investigation. I think somebody leaked this. There's been speculation it was Mr. McKay to try to get the president to act in some way that could impact the public perception of the Mueller investigation. This is just one more reason, Maria, in my judgment, why Mr. Mueller needs to wrap this up and bring this to a conclusion. I'm not saying he should be fired. I'm not trying to get in his way. But this has gone on long enough, and the American people are entitled to know what, if anything, Mr. Mueller has concluded. And until he does that, the sideshow and the circus acts and the rumor and the innuendo is going to continue, but it's all speculation.
So when do you think he will wrap up? I mean, we've been waiting for any evidence of collusion. That's not there. We've been waiting for some evidence of obstruction. Hasn't had that. So have you asked Robert Mueller when he'll wrap it up?
No, ma'am. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to call Mr. Mueller. I think Mr. Mueller needs. I understand he's a reasonable guy with a lot of experience, and I hope he understands that for the country's sake, he needs to bring this to a conclusion and tell us what, if anything, he's found out. I think he's going to conclude that yes, Russia tried to interfere in the election. They've been doing it for 50 years,
right?
But there's no collusion, and frankly, that it continues by Russia.
Yeah. I know Mark Penn had a great piece recently. You know, you've written about a lot about this as well, Hugo. They could manufacture or find some crime, but so far it hasn't been there. And, you know, Rod Rosenstein has sat on documents that Congress is asking for.
Right.
In terms of, yeah.
I do think the documents need to be. I don't want to endanger national security, but I do think the documents need to be released so the American people can figure this out for themselves.
Can understand how this whole narrative was started, that the president had anything to do with Russia meddling. Senator, thank you.